Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast purely focused on cycling style, fashion, and aesthetics, and the only important and therefore superficial things in cycling. I'm your host, Alex. I'm joined by my co-host, Tony, and Warren, who is back from riding his bike in internet-less places. Today, we'll have another very special guest on the show. Last week, we had Prempton Batku of Alpha Velo on the program. Go back and listen to this program if you haven't. Today, we're having a special guest. Her name is Virginie Palermo, and she's an ambassador for Panorama Studios, and we'll be talking about the brand with her today. Guys, how are you doing this week?
Doing well.
Yeah. I was away from the internet for a little while. I was on a rural island in, I guess, southern Ontario. It had roads, but the place I was staying, the cottage I was at, did not have great internet. So yeah, did some riding. Not to brag, but took a KOM. So, successful vacation all around. And I looked good while doing it.
What kit did you bring with you? What were you wearing while on this trip?
I had some MAAP kit with me. I believe I had 2 separate MAAP kits. Yes, I did.
And no one saw it, because you were in the middle of nowhere.
That's right, but I still looked good.
Yeah, looking good isn't about other people; it's about yourself. You should have that mentality. Yep. Every time you clip in, you should be looking good, even if you're in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're on the road to nowhere.
Do it for yourself.
So, boys, I think we got ourselves a little debate that came up. Just for our listeners here, we received an email from a gentleman named Adam in Toronto.
Definitely, it sparked a lot of debate on our WhatsApp chat that we have going. And, maybe what I'll do, Tony, I'll summarize this gentleman's conundrum, the email that he put to us.
I just want to say quickly, it's good he came to us because we are the foremost authorities. And I think that we should let other people know that if they have these issues, they're uncertain about a certain cycling fashion item or choice of style or something they've got, that send us an email, send us a DM. There's always an opportunity to reach us. So he did the right thing, and we'll help you out. But this one's definitely got us talking.
Absolutely, you're right, Tony. He, that's very good on Adam's part to write to the authority with his moral dilemma that he has here. So I'll summarize the issue. So he says he's a longtime listener, first time caller. He has a question that he's not too sure about. He says, is it acceptable to wear a pro jersey? In his case, it's the Legion of Los Angeles jersey that he got as a gift from his wife. So actually, a very nice gift from his wife. Kudos there. He says he's gotten both positive and negative feedback from other cyclists on wearing the Legion jersey. He's a big fan of the Legion team, the Williams brothers, and I think most importantly, he says their commitment to increasing diversity and inclusion in cycling. So basically, he likes what the jersey represents, equality and inclusion, but he's wondering if it's appropriate to wear the jersey. The analogy that he puts there, he feels that it would be akin to showing up to a pickup basketball game in a Jordan jersey and the matching Bulls short. So he wonders, is it overkill? So basically, I guess the question, should you wear that team jersey if you're not in the team? Or he adds, should he ride directly to Montreal and toss himself into the canal? So guys, what's your take on this?
For me, I support Adam wearing this jersey. I probably wouldn't wear it myself, but I think his points of why he chooses to wearing it and being a big fan of the Williams brothers and what that team's about, I can't really fault that. And I do think in terms of like team kits, especially like non-pro team kits, I mean, I think we've touched on pro team kits. A lot of them are pretty ugly, and can't wait for when they release next year's kits and we will rate all of those. But in terms of like team kits, I actually think the Legion kit is pretty good and actually isn't plastered with logos, which is nice, despite which is, what I imagine is probably a pretty substantial investment from Zwift, which, side note, Zwift, if you are listening, we would also accept a substantial investment. I think it looks pretty good. And then the cause behind the team, can't fault that. Probably wouldn't wear it myself. Yeah, I don't really have a problem with this.
Yeah, I'm actually sort of in agree with you, Warren. I want to make the first thing clear. World Tour kits are out. We're making an exception here because of the level and what Legion sort of represents and their commitment to certain very important things in cycling. But your World Tour kit, no, we don't need you in a Astana kit. Kazakhstan doesn't need your support. So World Tour kits, you're out. Now, I think there are some parameters around my agreement that he wear this. One, this can't be your main jersey. Now, as you get, I think he mentioned he's sort of a pandemic cyclist and he's newer into it. So obviously his kit range probably isn't huge, but the kind of one most people, people mostly see you out can't be this jersey. You can't be the Legion guy. This is one maybe for kind of a special Fast Friday ride or something like that. So I agree with a lot of what Warren said, but this can't be your top of the rotation jersey. This has to be a more special kind of coming out. Maybe people don't know about Legion. It gives you an opportunity to talk, but that's one of the rules. If this is all you've got is a Legion jersey, I'm going to need you to get online, get to Albion, La Passion, Panorama, MAAP. We got a lot of brands to talk about. Go buy yourself something nice to be a top of the rotation jersey.
Yeah, so Tony, I think you raise an important point. Like I do think, and it's great that Adam is new to cycling. I think, obviously more people are getting into the sport, and that's great. Maybe invest in some basics there. So as Tony suggested, all the brands, like get yourself some solid color jerseys, black bibs that can be sort of the basis of your rotation. So on the Legion issue, like I think that wearing the kit of a team that you're not a part of is a little bit like wearing the Harvard sweatshirt when you haven't been to Harvard, because it lends itself to awkward questions. Like you're walking around town with a Yale sweatshirt and someone says, "Oh, you went to Yale," and you're like, "Well, actually, no, I didn't." And it's just an awkward conversation. Now, Legion, obviously, if you're a newish cyclist in Toronto, it's very unlikely that you're part of Legion, so you wouldn't have that conversation. But I feel like it's on
I was
kind
going
of
to
the
say, I
same.
disagree with you.
Yeah, it's kind of on the same level. I personally don't think you should wear that if you're not in the team. I am somewhat willing to make an exception for Legion just because of how nice the jersey is. I personally find it's a very visually appealing
They've done a
jersey.
great
There's
job.
a lot going on there. It's kind of a splash model of jersey. It's made by Rafa, just quality brand. So I'm willing to make an exception for Legion, but as a general rule of thumb, I would not wear team kit that I'm not a part of.
I did want to just add that this morning at the end of my ride, we went to coffee shop and another ride ended at that shop after us, and there was a guy wearing a Dimension Data skin suit. And
Yeah, I told you, World Tour is a no.
oh, I know, and I'm just bringing it up because of how ridiculously it looked. Because one, the team is now what, Quebec next hash slash about to go out of business, but like
They're in the canal for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're that team is way in the canal. But and just like it just looked, not only does it look bad because it's a world tour team, it's not even a current like world tour team iteration. So
What's amazing about this Dimension Data story too is that the guy's commitment to Dimension Data, like getting a skin suit, like it's
Yeah.
he didn't even just get the jersey. Like he actually went one step further and got the skin suit. That's another level of commitment to the Dimension
yeah,
Data look. I just want to say the only pro team kit that I think you're allowed to wear is US Postal. I think that's the only one that I would allow our listeners to wear. But other
what
than that,
about
I think
Discovery
I'm a
Channel?
no on team kits. Yeah, even then, I think it was kind of I think it was only the last year of Lance's
Yeah, something like that.
little Roman Empire that he was running there for 7 years. So I'd keep it to U.S. Postal. All right, so moving on to our next segment where we review and discuss new releases. One thing that definitely got our attention this week was this new release from MAAP. It is called the Alt Road Collection. So, we have off road, now we have alt road, so alternative road, which is definitely interesting. And Warren, I'll let you introduce it.
Sure. So as I mentioned during the intro, I own a fair bit of map kit. various iterations. So I am, I'm on their email list, and they've just launched this, what they're calling the Alt Road Collection. Literally just got an email like an hour before we started recording, so still be pretty fresh by the time this podcast is out. And essentially is it's a gravel release, basically. Like that's the easiest way of saying it. And they've I actually don't know what the acronym of MAAP normally stands for. I think it has something to do with
I think it's
Melbourne, but
Melbourne Apparel. Melbourne
yeah,
Apparel.
yeah. So they've changed it for this gravel release to be Modular Alternate Apparel Project, when really it is gravel trash. That, I know that's not the right acronym, but this is just like, I kind of jumped ahead from describing it to just saying like this is the worst kind of like making new kit and trying to sell it as something else, where it's just road kit with like different colored zipper tags, like, if you could tell, I'm not a huge fan. It's got like slightly, I want to say like softer or warmer colors than MAAP usually does. It's actually, if anything, the designs are maybe a little more restrained than they've been lately. I don't know. It's like, I think we already posted about it on our Instagram, at Cycling Fashion Week, and basically questioned if this was like dadcore. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I gotta say, you posted this dad core comment, Warren, because it is true. Like it reminds me, and I'm gonna sound old here, but it reminds me a little bit of how like Gen Z dresses, with the kind of the loose fitting clothes and stuff that just looks basically like, I don't know, people used to dress in the 1990s. But my wife, actually, credit to her, she said, no, this isn't dad core. This is UPS driver style. My wife owns a manufacturing business, and she does a lot of business with UPS. And she said that's exactly how they dress. And one of the pictures that MAAP posted, there's a guy there. He's wearing like khaki colored and black bibs, and he's got this big loose kind of brownish khaki shirt with arm warmers and black gloves. And my wife said that's exactly how the UPS drivers dress. They're wearing shorts. They're wearing a brown shirt with arm warmers and black gloves. This is basically a UPS MAAP collaboration here.
Yeah, I mean, I just to jump in quickly, I don't think I have too much to add, but I think Alex mentioned in the first episode, and that is we're not against gravel. There's some beautiful gravel riding, but there's no reason you can't bring road style to gravel riding. I mean, all this sort of recent releases of alt road and off road and up road and whatever they've got. It's not necessary because people have been riding gravel for a long time and they've just been wearing their road kits, and it's comfortable and it's totally acceptable. And so you're taking something that's unnecessary from a practical standpoint, and then I would say devaluing the style element of it. Just continue on, wear your road collection. You don't need this.
I guess it's just a source of growth for brands that think they can tap into a whole new market and create that sales growth by marketing both the road apparel and the gravel apparel. I just want to say as well, just on the UPS idea, I just want to give a shout out to all the UPS drivers out there during the pandemic, delivering our expensive cycling goods that we ordered on the internet. Just a big thank you to all the UPS drivers out there, and maybe that's why MAAP is putting out this release as a big thank you to the UPS drivers. So I just look, we've had a pretty negative take on this release, and I'm sure some of our listeners will disagree. I just want to put it out there, like one of the cyclists that we know and ride with, replied to our story on Instagram, and he said he loved this. So maybe we don't have the consensus opinion. Maybe people do love this, but I guess this release is just not really aligned with the philosophy of Cycling Fashion Week, which is very kind of road focused. So
Well,
maybe we're not.
style focused.
Yeah, but we do, Tony, you said it, right? We generally don't think there's a need for gravel. We're more, lovers of road kit. So maybe we're not the right people for this release, but yeah, overall, just definitely not my cup of tea.
I think that's kind of where I feel like it's just halfway. It hasn't fully left road, and it hasn't fully gone like full gravel, wearing a pair of Vans on your bike packing trip, and it's just like, half your toe in the water kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe that's why it doesn't quite do it for me.
But the thing about these like hybrid alt road, gravel type releases is at some point I think people just need to buy mountain bikes and just need to become mountain bikers, because if you're going to dress like that, to me, you don't want to be a road cyclist. You want to be a mountain biker. And Warren, what was the bike, the gravel model that just came out like last week or something? And this thing just basically looked like a mountain bike. And this is a release for people who want to be into mountain biking, but are not comfortable saying it in public or something.
I forget the one you mean. Do you mean the gravel bike that had full suspension?
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly forget what brand that was, because I feel like a couple brands have done that now. But yeah, I mean, as basically, if you're buying a gravel bike with full suspension, I agree with you. You just want to be a mountain biker, and maybe, maybe that's
Maybe you should
okay.
be.
And yeah,
So I have an interesting take on that, because I think this is a story a lot of our listeners uh, will either have had themselves or been sort of part of, is when you get yourself or someone new into road cycling, getting them into a spandex lycra kit is like pulling teeth. They'll resist it. They'll say they don't need it. They'll find some sort of way. They don't like the way it looks. They're not sort of comfortable with the aesthetic of it. But then once I guess you get into it, and hence why we've brought up a whole podcast on this, you love it so much, the way it feels, the look and stuff, that even though you're completely right, these people just want to be mountain bikers, but in an odd way, they're resisting the mountain bike outfit and aesthetic the way a new road cyclist will resist a pair of bibs and a jersey. I say those new people, listen, it's what's best for you. Just get the bibs and the jersey. And so it's what's best for you. Just get your mountain bike, get a pair of baggy shorts and a t-shirt that says ride hard on it or something, and just be your truth.
We love you the way you are. You don't need to try to be someone else. Just live life the way that you are happiest. And if that's being a mountain biker, then that's great. And we will love you just as much.
Just might not follow you on Instagram.
All right. So for our next segment, we have a very special guest this week on the program, second week in a row. This week, we welcome Virginie Palermo. She is an ambassador with Paranormal Studios, which we'll obviously talk about, but also Alba Optics. You can follow her on Instagram at Virginie Palermo. And she is here tonight with us on the podcast. Hi, Virginie. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I think it's great to have you on the podcast because of your connection with Paranormal Studios, which I want to talk about because they are sort of controlling the conversation in terms of cycling style right now. It is kind of the brand that people like to wear. They're pretty much on top of their game. So I do want to talk about that. But before we do that, tell us a little bit how you came into cycling and how you became an ambassador for those brands.
Yeah, for sure. Came into cycling. I have a background in skateboarding and snowboarding. I know that probably doesn't sound like it has any relationship with cycling.
Oh no, it 100% does.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt, but if we've talked a lot about how most sort of mid-30 road cyclists are just 90s skateboarders who couldn't fall off things anymore.
Yeah. So again, yeah, background skateboarding and snowboarding. Worked in that industry for quite a long time, and moved back to Toronto and was kind of looking for something else to do that wasn't destroying my body too physically. And yeah, kind of just picked up cycling. Always had a bike, always rode as a commuter. Especially, I lived in Ottawa for a really long time, and it's a big city for commuting. So yeah, kind of had a bike in that way, and definitely an adrenaline seeker. So when I found out that a road bike made me go faster, I got really into it. And yeah, kind of just, I quickly fell in love with it, honestly, with the community that came around with it. That was always my passion in snowboarding and skateboarding as well, was the community that it kind of gave me. Cycling kind of gave me the exact same community. So it really, I got really obsessed over cycling I guess a fitness level, but for me, it was mostly for dealing with anxiety and dealing with, any mental health. I found cycling really, really helped with that kind of stuff. And I get really attached to anything that provides that help. So yeah.
That's an interesting take. You don't hear it too much, like cycling as a mental health kind of release valve, but I agree with that. And for me, there's nothing better than a solo ride to just kind of reset. I guess you're more into the community. I like the solo ride to just kind of get my thoughts straight. And yeah,
No, I am into the solo rides as well a lot. Sometimes I need to step away from solo rides because I'll get too into my head, and I
right.
almost need that community to like kind of talk to me, and kind of, I don't know, just get me out of some thoughts. But yeah.
I'm sorry that you had to live in Ottawa. You said you live there. Was that okay or
It was great. I loved Ottawa. Ottawa
okay?
was fantastic. I went to school there, so I did both of my bachelor degrees out in Ottawa. It was a great place to be a student. So
Exciting. Well, I just wanted
yeah.
to make a comment on, you said, you got really obsessed with it, and we don't run an extremely niche cycling fashion podcast because it's not something that you get obsessed with. I mean, you're not alone in the obsession that cycling brings.
Yeah.
For Alex and I, it's a decade plus of doing this, and so it's great to have another obsessed person. But
And I'm sure most of our listeners are as well, because you got to be a
yeah,
pretty niche person to listen to this podcast in the first place.
yeah.
Okay, so Virginie, tell us about your connection to
Mhm.
Panormal and how you became an ambassador for that brand.
Cool. Yeah. It seems to be the question people love to ask. It kind of really just happened. And I think it really happened based off of what I was doing and just the passion I think I was promoting and showing. Panorman started, or Blacksmith Cycle here in Toronto, the bike shop, started carrying it. And Panorman is always looking for, obviously, people to represent the brand, especially where it's being sold. So yeah, they kind of were looking for someone in Toronto and reached out, and it kind of just rolled. I don't know. It happened. I got invited out to Mallorca to meet everyone, which is a really, really cool experience, I think, and a very interesting thing. When I got contacted to be an ambassador, I really thought it was just, yeah, I was very excited, but I didn't think it was that great until I got asked to come out to Mallorca and meet everyone. And I thought it was very special, that a brand like that uh, kind of tries to create an actual relationship with everybody that they do bring on as an ambassador. And then kind of from that trip on, the relationship and the ambassadorship just grew bigger and bigger. And yeah, it's been great. They're really good people, and I think really what they're trying to promote is, yeah, that passion and that community. So I think that drove them to contact me.
Just as an aside, is Mallorca as good as they say for cycling? Like I've heard it's basically paradise, like perfect pavement, insane views. Is it as good as that or?
Honestly, I haven't been too many other places to cycle, so maybe I'm a little bit not that well informed, but it was an amazing place to be. If there's one thing I noticed the most was how kind drivers were to cyclists out
Mm.
there. Everyone like waits for you, especially on a climb. The cars don't try and pass you; they'll like wait and hang out behind you until you finish your climb, which is very weird considering.
Yeah, it's a big commitment because it can be a while in these climbs, you know.
Yeah.
So, Virginia, can you just tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibility being ambassador for Panormal, what that entails, sort of how you help the brand beyond just the social media?
It's obviously wearing the kit and showing it to everybody, but there is actually a lot behind the scenes that I think a lot of people don't fully know or understand. We all, as ambassadors, work quite closely with like it's direct. So we work directly with everybody from Panormal in Copenhagen. Lots of like communication and meetings, and we talk about. We get sent obviously the product, and we wear it, and they ask for a lot of feedback and how it fits, and are the straps too loose? Are the arms too long? Like how is the cut versus like on the females, on the males? So there's a lot of our role that's there to help them better the design and better the product. And it's obviously building a community. They're very, very strong on the idea of community and passion. And they're really pushing women cycling, which is something that I really, really appreciate. Yeah, they are always encouraging like any idea that we have as women, any rides we want to do, they encourage it, they push it. So yeah,
That's the point about women is interesting because there's some brands that as a man, I like their products. I like to wear them, but I noticed early on that they didn't make stuff for women at all. Like Tony, did Albion start making for women recently? I think they
Albion
have,
just
right?
started making women. That was actually a bit of a contentious issue, sort of.
Because they for the longest time they didn't.
They didn't, and it's obviously too bad, and we can get into probably manufacturing quantities and market share and stuff like this, but yeah, Panorama was definitely one of the first companies I noticed besides Rafa, which is obviously the sort of top of that kind of world, to sort of really make female and as well make their sort of collection uniform between the males and females. So we had Lily on a few podcasts ago, and she said that a lot of times if they do make a female kit, they make not just female cuts, but female colors and styles. Whereas Panorama, as far as I understand, Virginia can correct me, that if you see a kit that you love on a male riding and you want to buy the female version, the female cut of it, you're going to be able to get the same colors, the same patterns, everything.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what's really nice about it. Again, going back to like my snowboard and skateboard experience, like I never rode snowboard gear that was for girls. I always wanted to ride the guy stuff because the colors were way nicer, and even the fits honestly fit better. So it is something that I think is unique with Panomal, is that everything you see on the guy's side is identical on the women's.
Why do you think Panorama became as big as they are now? And again, I don't know if they're huge in terms of actual volume sold, probably not. But in terms of like cultural relevance to cycling style right now, I find that they are kind of on top of the game, or they sort of dominate the conversation. They dictate what the trends are and what is cool and what is beautiful. And it's just curious to me that a brand out of Copenhagen, right, which Copenhagen,
Mm-hmm.
great cycling culture in terms of commuting and things like that. But you don't really, when you think of like, places to go ride your bike in Europe, you probably think, the Dolomites or the Alps, or you don't think Denmark typically. So why do you think they became the brand that they are now?
I think they became the brand that they are now based off of almost the history. I don't know how much you guys know, but Paramal got started and created by Carl Olsen. He owns Woodwood as well.
Love them.
Yeah, so very into fashion. Essentially, it started with him not really liking kits that he saw out there and he just wanted to make his own. And then from there, people noticed it and people wanted it. I mean, personally, I think it's the simplicity of the kit. I think just having the basic logo and basic colors, or solid colors, I should say, I think just really intrigued people, or got people excited that they didn't have to wear a jersey full of sponsored ads or crazy colors. And same thing for the women. We didn't have to keep wearing jerseys that were super pink with flowers everywhere and hearts. And I honestly just think it's the simplicity of the kit, that it's so simple. Sometimes simple is better. But yeah, I really think that's kind of why it does well.
The point about the simplicity, I think, is great because I just, they're on top of the game right now, but I can't envision when we're not going to want to wear like a solid color jersey with a relatively small logo on it. Like it's pretty classic. It'll age well. So it's yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if they could end up being on top of the game for a long time.
Well, yeah, and I've noticed, I mean, similar to what you were saying, so Alex, and them driving the fashion trend. I mean, if you really look at, I mean, Universal Colors came out and they have some nice stuff, but essentially it was just like a Panorama ripoff. Like they came out with a very similar aesthetic. And then MAAP, who I've been following for a long time, was actually sort of one of the first, I would say, boutique cycling brands I sort of started buying. They had a whole different aesthetic until kind of Panorama took to the top. And now they're doing that sort of, earth tone palette, single color, simple text sort of thing. So they've really sort of run it. And so, Virginia, I had another question. We all know, many jokes have been made, and I'm sure you've heard them all, and I'm sure every member of Panorama has, but the PNS, obviously we know what it stands for, Panorama Studios, but it can give a bit of it can allude to something if you're kind of looking at it quick.
Of course.
Do you know where the name Panorama Studios came from? We know what the direct translation is, not normal, but what does it mean in terms of cycling?
I didn't actually know that you knew the translation, Tony. Congratulations.
I lived in Montreal for quite a while, Alex. I speak a bit of French.
So Panormal, the actual name, came from essentially the Lance Armstrong story of doping.
The GOAT, the greatest of all time, Lance.
Yes.
That just makes me love it even more.
Yeah, now I think some of my hot takes on Panorama switch. If they're Lance fans, ooh, that's good. That's us.
So yeah, it originated from that concept. There is, like, on their website, they have, if you go in the story section, there's, first of all, so many great stories of just so many epic kind of rides ambassadors and people have done. That's part of the brand. But there is a story dedicated to the name of the brand, and it's without going into big detail, it is from the Lance Armstrong doping.
Because Lance wasn't normal. He was just too good.
He was too good. He was not normal.
Yeah.
So,
he wasn't doping until he was doping. So
yeah, you're not doping until you're doping.
He was just an elite rider. And I noticed, like, they made a cyclocross kit where I noticed, like, they removed PNS and they put PAS instead, which I thought was very clever to get rid of that ambiguity there.
Yeah, they have their Panormal Studios kind of line, like they have their Mechanism and their Solitude and Essentials, but the owner, Carl Olsen, designed specifically the TKO. So that is TKO himself. So that was part of his design, was doing the PA in all capitals.
So the TKO line is actually interesting because it is a bit of a departure from the typical Panormal aesthetic, right? There's like the sort of Vincent van Gogh jersey. There's a lot more color. There's more, I call it like the more artsy line in a sense. This one I find it is a little bit less like on brand almost for Panormal.
I also want to jump in, Alex, and to just remind you that the most recent iteration of TKO had white bibs with it. So,
which, as we know, I'm a huge fan of white bibs.
Fan of white bibs. Alaphilippe needs to wear them this year.
White bibs forever.
I'm glad to hear you guys are fans of the white bibs. I 100% am a fan as well.
Do you wear a pair? Do you have a pair of the TKO white bibs?
100%. That was the first thing I requested, was white bibs.
And is that special occasions only for you, or is it just, your basic like Sunday morning ride white bibs?
It's definitely not special occasion, but
you're checking the weather report.
I'm definitely not going to lie. I'm checking the weather report. They're precious to me, so I really want them to last as long as they can.
You definitely feel faster. You feel faster in white bibs. You look faster and feel faster. So what's next for you, Virginie, in terms of the brand? Like you said, you went to Mallorca, I guess a few years back. Do you have other trips planned? I know with the pandemic, it hasn't been easy to travel, but do you have other trips planned related to the brand?
I do. I do have a trip that is in the books and is currently being planned. I unfortunately cannot speak of it. There is a trip. If it wasn't for a pandemic, there was many trips that in the past that were supposed to happen. And that's another great aspect. Like, they are constantly trying to make all ambassadors as part of the brand as they like as much as they can. But yeah, there are trips. We just can't speak of them at the moment.
Well, that'll be exciting. So we're probably heading near the end here, but to wrap you up, one of the reasons I asked you to come on was Panorama released last week their new fall winter collection. We didn't talk about it. It came out sort of after we recorded last week, but so I'd like to sort of talk about it now. We can kind of Alex and I can give our take, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about the collection, what's new, what's different. So I think I'll say it sort of just stays in Panorama's lane, which we've talked about before, is already sort of the driving force of what other brands are doing. They've kept with a lot of that kind of earth tones, so they've done some more color blocking with the sleeves and the core of the chest being different colors, but they sort of, they know what works, and they sort of kept with it with a slight update. I think it looks good, and I think it follows. I've always been happy with people who know what works and doesn't try and reinvent the wheel. Alex, what's your take on the new collection?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a very different take than yours. Again, it's very typical Panorama design, although they've introduced, it's kind of interesting. Like Panorama has always been big into the earthy colors, as you said, although here they're mixing, earth tones with cooler or colder colors as well, which is an interesting contrast. I think it's beautiful. It's very typical Panorama. I do want to say one thing though, the photography on the website, like where they introduced the collection, is absolutely stunning. It looks like they're in, I'm not sure if this is Iceland or like northern Norway or something, but it is absolutely stunning. They always do a great job at that.
Yeah, they've got great photography, but no matter how good Panorama does with their sort of marketing photography of that sort of northern Scandinavian Europe, it still won't drive me from desiring a ride in Italy or Spain or somewhere like that. So they're doing well, but I'm not planning a trip to Iceland for a bike ride anytime soon.
Virginie, have you received pieces from the new collection?
I have. I have received. I will say, like, my impression on the kit and this launch especially, what I do love that they do is there's almost no there's almost no combination you can't do. Like every piece I find goes well together, which is nice because then you're not stuck having to be like, oh, well, if I buy this bib, then I kind of have to buy this jersey with it. You can have a lot of fun with the kits. And another just interesting fact is that, or not fact, but what I find cool is that all of my kits from previous seasons are still very relevant when it comes to trying to match them with like new stuff. So it's like, you don't have buying something from another season isn't just gonna like be outdated after a year. So I like that they still keep that constant kind of simplicity. Yeah.
And that's a key point at, given the price point at which these things are selling. You definitely want to be able to reuse it and mix and match with other kits from other seasons as well. So that's a great point. Well, Virginie, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. So for our listeners, you can follow Virginie on Instagram at virginie.palermo. On Instagram, she'll be putting a lot of pictures of, Panorama inspired, kits or rides that she's going to be doing. Hopefully we will have pictures from that secret trip that she has planned and that she won't tell us the location of that trip. We're going to be looking for that on her Instagram account. Thanks very much, Virginie. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, into the canal, where we throw bad products and stuff we don't like into the canal. Tony, what do you got this week?
I have riding your road bike as your commuter bike. As a cyclist, I think, all of us as cyclists, we realize that cycling is more than just getting up, getting kitted out and riding fast for, a few hours. It's an encompassing sort of thing, but that means that there are separate functions for your bike. And if you are going to commute, you're going to go to work, you're going to go get your groceries, you're going to swing by the wine bar, whatever you've got, you need to get yourself a proper stylish commuter bike. I don't want to see people riding on it with, they've got their clipless pedals, but then they've got their Nikes on, their flat shoes. they're they're in a pair of jeans or hunch over. It looks terrible. It doesn't sort of go with everything. I understand that sometimes the G-Wagon just isn't practical and you've got to take your bike. And so in that case, make sure you have another bike in your quiver and make sure you have a proper commuter bike. I won't get into it here, but if anybody wants to, email or DM us asking, what they should be getting in a proper commuter bike, send it along. I'll give you some tips and info. There are a few different sort of categories we can get into that maintain the function and style of commuter. But for me, road bike as a commuter, that's into the canal.
Warren, what are you throwing into the canal this week?
So for me, it's actually, well, I actually think it's similar to Tony's in the sense that the kind of person who does this might also ride their road bike as a commuter, and that is, so I would like to throw lights into the canal with the caveat that if you run lights in the daytime on your bike, you might as well just ride straight into the canal with the lights on and have the flashing lights at the bottom of the canal. And because there's a couple reasons. One, you should already be like dressed so well that people are turning heads, they're dropping jaws, they see you go by and they're like, fuck, that guy, that person looks so good on a bike. And that gets their attention. They hit the brakes, they don't come anywhere near you, you are safe. I mean, that's one kind of argument. The other argument is it looks stupid. Like you see this big blinking light, you're like, what am I looking at here? Like I don't know. I think it looks like you're more concerned about safety than you are about looking good on your bike. At this point in the podcast, I think everybody should know the number one thing you should care about on your bike is looking good. So, safety is a very distant concern for me when I'm on the bike. That's why, yeah, I think running lights in the daytime. Like I understand there's people out there, they got families, they got kids, they're worried about them. You should be worried about how you look on the bike and how your family perceives you.
I just don't think they work. Like, and I'm gonna get some email or message or whatever being like, there's a study out of the University of Oslo that says that if you run daytime lights on your bike, you're 7.8% more visible to a car at 20 meters or some stuff. But like, I see it and I'm like, I see you as a cyclist long before I see your blinking light, right? Like in the middle of the day, a sunny day on a Sunday or whatever, like I see a cyclist there as I look forward way before I notice they've got their light on.
I often can't see, especially a flashing front light in the daytime. I don't even register it, unless I'm like a foot away from the person, because you simply can't see it.
So I'm going to ride straight into the canal because I run lights on my seat posts, even when I ride during the day. I do agree with you. Like the front light is totally useless. I think most accidents probably happen from the back. But I agree. It doesn't look great. For me, I feel like there's no choice. I think there's so many drivers that are just looking at their phones now that aren't paying attention to the road. And I'm just kind of hoping that by having this super bright light that just flashes really hard in their face, they'll just put the phone down and focus on driving.
See,
Yeah,
for
but
me,
they can't see it.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah. For me, they're looking at their phone. They're not gonna see your light. So.
Well, they might if it flashes. If it flashes like bright enough, they might.
Alex, I don't know. I think maybe I'm just more willing to like embrace the sweet release of death than you are, and that's probably because you have a child. But we both make sacrifices for our families, I guess.
But I mean, from a purely aesthetic point of view, I guess you're right. I just, I'm just not willing to go there. I'm very off-brand for Cycling Fashion Week, but yeah, I'm gonna ride into the canal on this one.
Hey, I was in the canal with the knee warmers. We can't bat 1,000.
No, exactly. Okay, so I'll do my canal for this week. This is going to be probably non-consensus, probably a controversial item that I'm going to throw into the canal, but I'm going to throw Princetown Carbon Works wheels into the canal. So I think I've literally thrown like $7,000 into the canal here. So, feel free to jump in and pick them up. Why am I throwing these very expensive wheels into the canal? So first of all, in terms of we've talked about Panorama Studios on the show today, saying that they're kind of at the top of the game in terms of kit. They are dictating the style and dominating the conversation. And in terms of wheels, like I think there's been generally a holy trinity of wheel companies, uh, being Envy, Lightweight, and Zip. That would probably be the holy trinity of wheels. Dictating again the conversation in terms of wheels. But there's this brand that came up, really kind of rising, called Princeton Carbon Works. And recently I went to buy some wheels. So I bought secondhand wheels because nothing is available on the market right now for a build that I'm doing that we will eventually get to. I know we keep talking about it, we keep teasing it, but we will get to it. And I bought some wheels. They weren't very expensive, but they were carbon and they look good. But the guy who was selling them to me, in the trunk of his car, he had a pair of Princeton Carbon Works wheels that he was test riding, I guess, from his friend who owns a shop. And they are allegedly the most advanced wheels that you can find technologically on the market. I think Filippo Ganna won the world championship time trials on them. Like Princeton, obviously rocket scientists. Like I get it, they are extremely advanced carbon wheels. But there's one thing I hate about them, and if you look at the sort of the inside of the wheels where the spokes meet the rims, there's like this serrated shape in the wheel, almost like a serrated knife in a sense, that I just find so ugly. And for me, if I'm paying $7,000 for a pair of wheels, um, is it too much to ask that they look good? And I unfortunately find that these wheels do not look good. Serrated inside of the wheel. Like I'm not trying to cut pizza with these wheels. I just want to ride my bike and look good. So Princeton Carbon Works wheels, I am throwing them into the canal purely for aesthetic reasons. I know this is extremely foolish given how much they cost and given the quality with which they're made. So guys, feel free to jump into the canal and pick them up, but I'm going to throw them into the canal.
I just wanted to ask kind of a question related to this. It also relates back to our discussion at the start of the episode, which is if you own a pair of Princeton Carbon Work wheels and a Princeton sweatshirt, but you didn't go to Princeton, how deep into the canal are you?
Okay, moving on to our next segment. We rate your bike for free. You, the listeners, send us pics and a description of your bike to cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com, and we will carefully and thoroughly analyze and review it on the podcast. So this week, we got a really interesting submission this week. So I'll read the email. So it's a guy named Jay. He writes, he says, "Good evening, gents. Attached, please find some photos of my setup for your review. I've included some on-bike and post-ride shots if you feel like dissecting the kit aesthetic as well." So definitely a detail-oriented listener here, as all our listeners, I'm sure, are. Jay, I asked him where he was from. He is from Florida. There's a lot of palm trees in the pics that he sends. So we will definitely post those on our Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. By the way, maybe as an aside, and maybe not for today, but maybe we should discuss, is Florida in the canal?
My first response to him was going to be apologies for being from Florida, the Australia of America.
With Florida Man and all the weird
Yeah.
stuff that happens down in Florida. But regardless, so let's get into Jay's bike. So I'll describe it a little bit, and you guys can kick off the discussion. So he has a look. So the bike brand is a look. I'm not sure which model it is exactly, but it is very aggressive sort of race bike that we have here. He's got some very nice Envy wheels there. I think they're the SES range from Envy, with some tan sidewalls. So he's got rim brakes as well on his look. So that's interesting. I think the look is a Look 785 actually. It's matte black. It's got the Look logo in sort of a light gray color. And yeah, that's Jay's bike. So let's get into the discussion, guys. What did you think?
I'm giving him like claps, kudos, high marks, 8.759. It's only a few bikes will probably be 10, but I think one thing I want to bring up is look itself. We talk endlessly about how sort of Eurocentric cycling should be. And we spend a lot of time talking about Italy, but we forget that France is just as beautiful and has just a rich history. And Look is a French company. They've done a lot of interesting stuff with bikes over the years. They were one of the first bikes to do carbon when they did the Lud Carbon. I guess it would have been the late 80s, mid 80s. So I'm really happy to see a Look bike. Again, it's another thing. It's not necessarily a niche brand because we know their pedals are big and they make some other stuff, but in terms of frame, it's sort of niche. And so that's another thing I'm always looking for. Are you looking to buy a bike that is not quite as, sort of seen out there as popular? And then he's hitting us with the deep dish envies. He's getting us, which I think are the Vittoria Corsa tan sidewalls. The picture's not clear enough, but obviously those are beautiful. Looks like he's got the stem slammed, the matte black. That kind of docks a point here and there, but I think it actually works really well with what he's, with the gray. Straight fork. There's a lot he's just hit here. And I love my bike with disc brakes, but when I see a nice set of rim brakes on a bike like this, I think it really is sort of a better look, to be honest. So save the rim brake.
So yeah, I mostly agree with you, Tony. I'd probably give this an 8 or like an 8.25. So most of all the reasons you've listed, like, yes, it is matte black, but I would also note both the fork and seat stays have these kind of really subtle gray graphic elements that I actually don't mind and makes it a little more interesting than your kind of standard matte black S-Works whatever. And yeah, just the fact that it's a Look alone makes it much better. But where I am going to deduct some points from him and why it is only about an 8 or an 8.25 for me is that in the photos that he sent us, particularly the ones of the bike in his living room, is the fact that he's got a bar bag on the front of the bike, because a bike like this is, this is not a bar bag type of bike. This is a race bike. It's for going fast. It looks fast. So yeah, the bar bag, not a good look. Sorry, Jay.
See how this cyclist destroyed all the aero gains in one simple trick.
Yeah, so I'm going to give him an 8.5. I agree with you on the bar bag, Warren. That should be that should be in the canal. But the fact that he's from South Florida, which is like, as Tony said, the Australia of America, and he rides a Look. To me, this is, from Jay's part, like, that is a very big commitment to being Euro and being pro. And I think it's like connoisseur stuff. So right there, I think I'm actually giving him bonus points for getting a Look. You guys discussed everything, the wheels. It's all very much on point. My main beef, and that's why I deduct 1.5 from that bike, is if you're buying a Look, to me, it should be mandatory that you get it in the Pete Mondrian colorway. That was part of the La Vie Claire team in the 1980s, mid 1980s. We put it up on our Instagram actually about a week ago before Paris Roubaix. It was a small French team that did a sort of a reenactment of the mid 1980s kit that Greg LeMond was wearing. They called Team Delco, and they wore it at Paris Roubaix. So the kit has the Pete Mondrian colorway with the geometric and the primary colors there. Very iconic, very classic colors in cycling, and Look was sort of, pioneering the use of that colorway in their bikes, and they have for many, many years, and they keep coming out with new bikes that have this colorway. To me, if you're buying a Look, you have to get this colorway. You can't go, with a black or a white bike or something like that. So I'm going to deduct a few points, 1.5 points for that, but it's overall, Jay, it's very well done. I do want to discuss his kit a little bit. So in one of the photos, again, we'll post on our Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week, he's got, Panorama kit, right? He's got like those kind of chocolate brown bibs, or I can't tell if they're black and it's the Florida sun that's making them look chocolate brown, but no, I do think they're chocolate brown.
I think they're brown.
And he's got like this mint green Panormal jersey there. Has got white shoes, double boa with yellow socks, and a white helmet. I mean, the kit, I gotta say, it's a 9.5 out of 10. It's very, very good.
The socks, though, the socks have some issue. There's a graphic on them. They're not white. He's got the white helmet, but the socks aren't white. They're fun socks, which is no good. I think I want to point out Virginie made a great comment in our interview with her. Panormal does a good job of sort of making everything go together, so it looks very cohesive. I want one more comment on the bike, which this is a debate we can have whether it's pro or not, but it looks like he's got a Stages left drive power meter. Is a power meter important to giving your bike another level? Is it essential to saying, okay, I'm giving this an 8.75, it's a 9 because they have a power meter, or is it an 8.25 because they have a power meter?
Not a Stages power meter.
Yeah, I think if you get a power meter, you got to go Favero, Assioma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something
it's the
like
only
that.
one.
But
yeah,
and you got to get the duo. You got to get
have
both
a Stages
sides.
power meter, Warren?
No, I've got the 4i.
Oh, okay.
4i, which I will note, the reason why I partly make fun of Stages is that you can see the Stages logo on Jay's bike here. It's got this, like, the Stages logo is terrible, and they throw it right on the crank when they make it. My 4i left-sided power meter, you don't even know. It just says Ultegra, like, oh shit, I just admitted I only have Ultegra on my bike. Anyway,
I'm going to have a whole segment on whether Dura Ace is actually more stylish. We'll discuss this later.
Anyway, so for me, Stages, just both the bad logo and their, like, questionable reliability. Like, I don't know. I don't see a power meter as, like, a style flex personally. Like, maybe debate it. Yeah, I'd go with Alex. I think it's only Favero or nothing. And I didn't really have much to add. I agree with you guys about Jay's kit. I think it looks pretty good. The fun socks are in the canal for sure. He looks like an ice cream sandwich, but I mean that in a good way. Like, it's like, it pops, it stands out.
Well, it's very Florida relevant, right? It's you look
true.
at this kit and it just screams Miami. Anyway, great kit. I think the kit is good. Maybe I'll have to agree with you guys on the socks, but in a sense, like, I don't know if he, like, when you've mastered the rules so much, you can be allowed to break them. And because it's this one little thing on his kit that he, that doesn't quite fit with the rest, I wonder, there's this term in Italian called, it's called sprezzatura. It means like having nonchalance, which, sorry, I'm translating it with a French word, but it's like being kind of effortlessly not fully kept together. And that's kind of what the socks do. I find it's like Jay knows the rules so much that he can afford to deviate from them a little bit. So I think it's a pretty darn good kit he's got there.
I'm going to do a full 180 and agree with Alex on that point there. Made a great point. Everything else about his bike, his kit, his helmet, everything's perfect. So have a little fun with your fun socks. Warren, we're now ganging up on you.
Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks to Tony. Thanks to Warren. Thanks to our listeners. We'll be back next week with another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. In the meantime, please send us DMs and follow us on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week, or send us an email, cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. Don't forget to listen and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tell your friends about the podcast, and we will be back next week. Thanks, everyone.